This is News 12 Law Call.
Hi there, and welcome to a unique edition of News 12 Law Call. If you know someone who has had kidney cancer, testicular cancer, or ulcerative colitis, there may be some relief financially. Tonight's topic, poisoned by pollution. Want to give you the phone number to call if you could jot this down. It's 844-706-1212. There'll be a special video to set up our program tonight and answers to your email questions. What if you moved away from a contaminated area? Are you still covered? We welcome back into the program, fresh off a little holiday on the coast, Mr. Victor Hall.
It was a training holiday.
Oh, okay.
It was a training holiday.
I know.
I learned stuff going and listening to other great lawyers, we're doing it again tonight. We brought a great lawyer to help our community understand about a real danger in the community that the city of Augusta is trying to address and other communities are trying to address. So I'll go ahead and start right now. I brought Caleb Cunningham here to help us deal with mass torts and a particular type of contamination that is affecting our community directly. Caleb is from Alabama. I went to law school in Alabama. He went to law school in Alabama, so that's two good things about him right away.
Okay.
And he's come here to help us to understand what's going on in our community with regard to let's call it a toxic tort. And we'll start off, Caleb, if it's okay with you, presenting a video from his law firm, and we are going to work together to protect members of our community that have suffered injury as a result of water contamination here in the CSRA.
Yep.
So can we play it now?
And we'll be back with Caleb in just a moment.
Lawsuits are moving forward against the manufacturers of PFAS chemicals, toxic compounds that can now be found in the bodies of about 98% of human beings, including those who have never even lived in contaminated areas. These newest lawsuits revolve around the use of these PFAS compounds in firefighting foam used on military bases, where we're seeing a sharp increase in diseases linked to exposure. Joining me to explain what's happening is attorney Wes Bowden. So, Wes, let's start with this issue. Obviously, Mike Papantonio and I many times have talked about these PFAS chemicals here on America's Lawyer, but we haven't covered this specific area before. So we're talking about firefighting foam that is typically used, I don't want to say in excess, but it's frequently used on military bases. Tell us about the applications of the firefighting foam.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is that, PFAS, you guys have done a lot of shows on that as well. They're very persistent, they're bioaccumulative, and they're toxic. So a lot of times when these chemicals are used, if they get into the environment, they just stay there. And one of the products that has led to probably the largest increase of contamination is the use of firefighting foams, AFFF Class B foams. And what these are the foam that comes out of the fire truck, the foam that they use at airports to extinguish fuel fires. That's what they are. And so for decades, these were used unknowingly by the fire departments, by our local towns, by our counties, by our first responders, the brave men and women who we rely upon to protect ourselves, protect our community. They didn't know that there was PFAS chemicals in there, and for decades they were used and resulted in this environmental contamination.
So we're talking about these chemicals being used because obviously they're very efficient. They go over the fire, they blanket it, smother it, prevent oxygen. So yeah, it works wonders, especially when you're dealing with fuel fires from airplanes or vehicles, whatever it is. Fast, efficient, gets the job done. So for years and years and years, the manufacturers understood, they knew what's going into this product. We know what we've got in here, but there's no reason that everybody else needs to be concerned with this, which is typical. I mean, you've handled enough lawsuits. I've done enough segments on this. It always goes back to what the manufacturer knew and what they told the people using the products, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think you mentioned it earlier just now. Most of these foams were used for training purposes. You train, most of it, 90-95% of this product that was used historically was for training purposes. And you're exactly right. What the companies failed to tell the end users, the firefighters themselves, was that this product needs to be contained. No matter when you use it, you collect it, you contain it, and you destroy it. Because they failed to tell people that, we're now faced with nationwide contamination, really global contamination. So that's a key element of one of the case that's going to trial here in about 2 weeks. And we believe that we're going to be able to prove to a jury what these companies knew. And there's no question that the companies knew that these compounds were persistent, they were bioaccumulative, and they were toxic as far back as the 1970s.
Okay.
And you know, we want to keep this simple for you. We can use all these scientific terms and legal terms, but this chemical or these chemical compounds were not only in the foam, but also in your household goods, the non-stick frying pans, your popcorn, microwave popcorn bags, things of that nature. And the reason they're so dangerous is because they are the type of chemical that does not just expire over a limited period of time. In fact, it's basically going to take centuries to avoid it. And there's testing that's already been done in our community confirming that these chemicals are in the water in our community. And Augusta has already joined the lawsuit, and I'm going to have Caleb talk about it because Augusta's got to clean up these chemicals from their water and the water that's being distributed. And most importantly for us individually, there are people dying as a result of exposure to these chemicals. So, Caleb, let's talk about that right now.
Well, and let me start off by thanking you for having me on the program. The City of Augusta and water providers all over the country are having to add filtration and do things that cost a lot of money to fix what these companies did. You know, if I poisoned water, if I went upstream and poisoned water, I'd go to jail. But apparently, if you poison everybody's water, you get to be on the stock exchange. And it should make you angry, and I hope it makes you angry, what these companies did and what they knew, because it's been in the water all this time, and we didn't even know we were supposed to be looking for it. It's one of 60,000 unregulated chemicals. The federal government has finally made a regulation that's coming up and putting a minimum, or maximum level that said if it's over this, you've got to do something. No amount of this is safe. But to give you an idea of how little this stuff can be dangerous, is that it's going to be measured in parts per trillion. And what that is 1 second in 32,000 years. That's how little of this stuff is dangerous, folks. And it is in the water. It's been confirmed here in Augusta in the public water supply. It's probably been in the water supply of somewhere you lived before. And if you have one of these cancers or conditions, you're at more than double the risk of getting them because you were exposed to these chemicals that these companies put in all of our water.
And Caleb, we had briefly shown the screen earlier. I don't know if we could put it back up, but why don't you share some of the cancers so in case any of our viewers are aware of family members, they may be able to get help.
So the ones that we know have a doubling of risk is ulcerative colitis, kidney cancer, and testicular cancer. There's some evidence towards thyroid disease and preeclampsia, but those cases we're not taking. It's kidney cancer, testicular cancer, and kidney.
Okay, we do have a caller to get involved. I believe it's Richard. Are you there? Richard?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead with your question for Caleb.
Okay, the question I have is I live in South Augusta, and we have problems with the sewer drains and all the sewer pipes. When it rains a certain amount, the sewer pipes gets clogged up, and it bubbles up through the sewer tops, and it drains into our storm drain. And it also leaves a bad smell. Well, we had a flood about a month ago here in South Augusta, and it rained like 7 inches for about 12 hours. We had sewer backup and, like I said, storm water backup. Well, the city come and cleaned out the ditches and all, but they also left a letter that stating that it was hazardous to play or be around these pipes because of the, the feces and the sewer being backed up. Now, this has been an ongoing problem for years. Is there, like I said, it's a city issue, but they come out, like I said, when it flows over, they measure and claim they're going to come back and fix the pipes because it's a pipe issue where they went and did it was like 3 phases they did, and they didn't do the last phase, so it backs up every time we get more than like 3 or 4 inches. What can we do as a neighborhood for that?
Well, I can tell you, Richard, you're probably going to have a claim against the city for a number of different potential injuries. One could be the personal injury, poisoning, bacterial infection, things of that nature, or another could be depreciation in the value of your property because of the nuisance and their failure to remedy the nuisance. So there are some things you can do. If you'll give us a call tomorrow, we'll see. We can delve into it in more detail and see if we can help you, Richard.
Excellent. We're going to take our first break, and on the other side of the break, we'd love to hear from you if you know anyone that has any of those type cancers, or if you're a firefighter and you're dealing with this foam. It'd be kind of interesting to get your perspective. Again, the phone number 844-706-1212. We'll be right back.
You're watching News 12 Law Call with host Neil Gordon. Joined by the Hawk Law Group, representing families suffering from serious injuries or wrongful death, with attorney Vic Hawk and veteran trial attorneys from the Hawk Law Group, Reed Sanders, Chase Hawk, Sean Merzlack, and Kip McAllister. Plus outstanding young trial lawyers, Tiana Baez and Chase Duff. And joined by guest attorneys from all across the CSRA. Your rights, your calls, live. News 12 Law Call.
Well, first time we've tackled the topic poisoned by pollution, and it's much more than just water supply. It has to do, a few of your family members have come down with kidney cancer, testicular cancer, or ulcerative colitis. It may be related to the water supply. The number to call, 844-706-1212. And at the beginning, Vic, we also talked about the kind of foam that firefighters use.
Yes, and that's something I want Caleb to address. Of course, firefighters, they would hear this and they want to know, hey, do I have some concern because I was doing all this testing and training with the foam. Is there any science to support a claim related to just being exposed by virtue of their skin touching the foam?
So the best science we have is about drinking it, about consuming it in your bodies. If those firefighters were using it, they probably live in a community that has it in their water, and they were exposed like everybody else. I'm not aware of any study that shows that transdermal or on the skin will cause the risk that we see with drinking it in our water. And that's what we're looking for. If you have somebody with ulcerative colitis, kidney cancer, testicular cancer, and they've been at one of these hot spots, which essentially is all over the country, unfortunately, because anywhere this stuff was used, you've been exposed to PFAS. As they said in the earlier segment, 98% of all humanity has it in their blood, and it can't get out. It bioaccumulates. It builds up over time. And what we're seeing in our testing is that the folks who've got these cancers are seeing really high rates of PFAS.
Now, let's help everyone understand the relationship to the cities. Were the cities and the counties lied to about these chemicals and the dangers of these chemicals as well?
Absolutely. So the bad guys here are the defendants that we're suing, which is 3M, DuPont, and some others. 3M made millions and millions of pounds of this stuff, and they poisoned the earth with it. They lied to the U.S. military, they lied to cities and states, and they lied to me and you. They lied to the federal government. They said, oh, there's nothing to worry about here. But they've known for a very long time about these increased cancer rates and these increased dangers of things. So the city is doing everything it can. They have filed a suit. The city has filed a suit and joined this big litigation to get the money for new pumps, for new filtration, and to fix the things that were broken because of this pollution. What I'm here to talk to you tonight about is what you can do, because you or your family member may have gotten one of these cancers or conditions because of drinking it, and you didn't know you were drinking it. It doesn't have a taste. It doesn't have a smell. There's no way for you to know until this testing started fairly recently that we've been exposed to all this PFAS.
Now, explain to our viewers how you know these cancers are related to their exposure to water containing PFAS, and that's just an acronym for a very long chemical name. So don't be concerned about it. It just makes it easier to say. But how do we know that the PFAS has caused these particular cancers?
So there's a great documentary that's free on YouTube that you can go watch if you're interested in, called The Devil We Know, that was about my firm, Levin, Papantonio, and Rafferty, has been involved with PFAS litigation for decades now. This has been a long train of things that took us to get here. One of the largest human studies in world history was done with PFOA and PFOS, which are PFAS chemicals. So the PFAS is a family of chemicals, and they made all sorts of little other acronyms that I can't say. But some of the nerdy folks at my office have gotten really good at saying. But so what they did is when they made these chemicals, they had to find a use for it, and they've spread it all over the earth. The way it got into most of our drinking water and the way that you and I have been exposed is through airports or military bases or firefighters putting out fires. The provider said, just spray this on top of the ground and it'll go away. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. It turns into like a cloud, a plume in the ground, and it moves around in the ground, and eventually it goes to where they've tapped a well for water. And they pump it up and they distribute it to all of us. Georgia has results on their environmental department's website, and South Augusta had PFOA numbers at 15 parts per trillion, which is more than 3 times the upcoming federal regulation.
Now,
Vic, I think we have a caller.
Okay, we'll get the caller
take it?
and then we'll do it.
Go right ahead. Caller, Missy, how are you this evening?
Good. How are you?
Great. How can we help you?
If you've been diagnosed with kidney cancer, how long do you have to file a claim?
So that's a great question. Thank you for asking. It's going to depend on what state you're in. There's a thing called statute of limitations, and those statute of limitations change from state to state. It's 2 years here in Georgia. Some states are longer, some states are shorter. What we require for our cases is 6 months of drinking or being exposed to water that we can confirm has PFAS or one of its sister chemicals in the water. That gives us what's called a latency period. You know, you can't just drink the water and then get cancer. You have to have had the exposure for a period of time, and then that causes the cancer. So I'm very sorry to hear that you may have cancer. And what it is you've got, from that diagnosis date, a timer starts. So here in Georgia, it would be 2 years.
If Missy were to come to see you and ask, what questions would you ask of her to try to ascertain if there may be a potential case?
So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. We have trained professionals at our law firm that will evaluate, because it may be you were exposed, you move around. A lot of Americans move around states. You don't know that the PFAS was in the water in, say, New Jersey. Well, that's where we will go back and hey, there's great, really high PFAS numbers here, and we can pick a state based on where we believe you were exposed to. So call the number, talk to one of the professionals, because that's one of the things we're going to ask you is where you lived, who were the water providers, and then we can go through our database that we've collected over the 20 years we've been doing this at Levin, Papantonio, and Rafferty, and find where we believe you were exposed to these high levels of PFAS.
All right, one last quick question. If they've been exposed and they have these cancers, how do you know that it's related to the PFAS? How much more likely are you to get a cancer if you've been exposed to these chemicals?
So we like to say it's a doubling of the risk. So that's this huge scientific significance, that doubling. And we see people who have no histories of these cancers in their family. PFAS is the cause.
Good.
All
and
right.
so there's 50% more likely to develop one of these cancers if they've been exposed?
Correct. And we're looking for numbers above that of the average American. Because this, what you heard the gentleman say earlier, bioaccumulates, that means it just stays in your body. Your body can't break this down either. You know, the sun can't break it down. Unfortunately, your body can't break it down. And so we will do a blood test, and we'll be able to find the amount of PFAS in your blood.
Okay.
Thanks, Caleb. We'll take our last break, and then more of your calls. Call in during the break so you can get in the queue at 844-706-1212. Well, thanks so much to Caleb for coming in from Pensacola, Florida, from Levin, Papantonio, and Rafferty. The website is levinlaw.com, or you can call in the morning at 850-435-7018. And, of course, you can just dial all fours if you'd like to reach Vic or the attorneys at the Hawk Law Group, and online at hawklawgroup.com. We do have another caller. Gerald is on the line, and Gerald has had ulcerative colitis for 38 years. First of all, we're so sorry you've endured that. And, Gerald, how can we help get you some peace of mind or some answers?
Well, I'm just wondering, I grew up in South Augusta. I can remember in South Augusta, even when I was a teenager, when the water would all the rain would come in Rocky Creek, the water would back up, go throughout Southlands, and I can remember boats coming down the road with motors on them, getting people from out of houses. And like I said, I came down with this in 1985, and at one time they thought that I had cancer. I had another colonoscopy done, and they ruled it out. But I've been told as I get older, I will have a higher and higher chance of coming down with colon cancer. And every year I have to get a colonoscopy.
Gerald, I'm going to let Caleb try to address that for you. The obvious problem that you have to get around is the statute of limitations, but that is a very specific analysis. So, Caleb, does that sound like the type of case that should be looked at, and how can he get evaluated?
Well, you can call our number, and we can talk to the professionals and get data, depending on where you lived and when you lived there, to evaluate the statute of limitations issue. If you're just curious for your own peace of mind, there are tests that you can have your doctor perform on your blood that will show the level of PFAS in your blood. I'm very sorry that you have ulcerative colitis. And, you know, as we deal with all of our clients that have these cancers and conditions, it's truly heartbreaking, because this is the fault of these defendants lying to us, the U.S. military, and population around the world.
Now, have these companies begun to make amends for what they've caused? What's going on with the litigation with the counties and cities right now?
So they have entered into a settlement for 3M for $10 to $12 billion. That's billion with a B, for water providers who've sued. One of the other defendants has also agreed to a couple $1 billion settlement. And that's just for the water providers to try to stop it in the future. We've not seen a settlement yet for the individual cases, but we know that this stuff is bad, and we know who caused it. And quite frankly, we've spent the last 20 years getting the science where it needed to be and catching up to this. Now the federal government is introducing those litigation, but we need to try to help as many people as we can who suffer from these conditions, who still have viable cases, to hold these defendants accountable for what has been done to them.
Now, is the federal government starting to intervene to require that city and counties clean up their water as a result of this contamination?
Absolutely. For the first time coming up this fall, it's going to be a cap on how much of this can be in our drinking water. Before, it was left up to the states. Some states had numbers, some states didn't. They were all over the place. The upcoming limitation will be 4 parts per trillion, and that's that 1 second in 32,000 years times 4. Yeah. So it's a very small amount, but that's the new regulation coming out to help protect us.
Yeah. And it's those parts that are hurting people.
That's absolutely right. It's those PFAS chemicals.
And Caleb, I know you came all this way from Florida, so we're going to record some programs for future playback. One is on CPAP, and then the second one
is on hair relaxer.
Hair relaxers.
Yeah. We'll record those tomorrow.
That's right.
We'll show them in the very near future.
Have a great night.
Thank you.